Nobody was supposed to find that plane. Not because it had been hidden, but because, according to every official record held by the United States Air Force, that aircraft never existed. And yet, there it was, intact, alone, in the middle of the Libyan desert, an endless stretch of sand and absolute silence reaching hundreds of miles in every direction. A B-24 Liberator, one of the most feared bombers of the Second World War, abandoned as if it had simply landed. 16 years. For 16 years, no one had found that aircraft, and when they finally did, they realized it would have been better if they'd never looked. Let's go back to 1943. The world is on fire. The North African campaign devours thousands of lives every week. It's in this context that a B-24 christened the Lady Be Good lifts off on April 4, 1943. Mission: strike port facilities in Italy. Crew: 9 men, young men, most of them under 25. A sandstorm punishes the desert. The takeoff is chaotic. Several planes turn back. The Lady Be Good pushes forward and then vanishes. No radio signal, no arrival confirmation, no report of being shot down. The plane disappears from the radar and from history as if it had never taken off at all. The Air Force records it, 9 dead, cause unknown. The case is closed. In 1959, an oil prospecting crew flies over the desert and spots something impossible in the sand. An intact aircraft. Not destroyed, not buried, the tires still partially inflated, the machine guns still in position, the water bottles inside still sealed, the emergency rations untouched. The Lady Be Good was there as if it had landed yesterday. But something was deeply wrong. No bullet holes, no catastrophic mechanical failure. The engines had been shut down in a controlled manner. The landing gear was retracted. The plane had come down belly first. Someone had landed that plane intentionally and then walked out into the desert, in the dark, without maps, without a compass. Why? Investigators begin reconstructing the final moments of the flight, and what they find isn't just tragic, it's disturbing in a way that will stay with you. The radio was working perfectly. The crew had called in for navigational assistance multiple times that night. The base received the signals, the base responded, and then silence. The official theory, lost in the darkness, with instruments thrown off by high-altitude winds, the crew believed they were still over the sea when they had already crossed into the African continent. When fuel ran out, they bailed out, convinced they were near the coastline. But they were 440 kilometers inside the Sahara. 9 men fell into the darkness over one of the most hostile environments on Earth, with temperatures that plunge below freezing at night and climb past 120 degrees during the day. And then they started walking. The diaries were found years later, along with the bodies, or rather, along with some of the bodies. The diary of co-pilot Robert Toner is one of the most devastating documents in military aviation history. Written in pencil, with letters growing smaller and shakier as the man's strength drained away. Day 1, all well. Day 2, Ed in bad shape. Day 5, all in critical condition. Day 8, Hate is still alive. And then the diary stops. Not with words of farewell, it simply stops, as if Toner's hand had dropped the pencil and he kept walking out of sheer refusal to accept that he was dying. Investigators found 5 of the 9 bodies. 4 were never found. 4 men vanished completely into the Sahara. No trace, no bones, nothing. This is where the official story ends. But it's also where certain questions begin to have no answer. Why was the aircraft so intact? 16 years of Saharan sun and sandstorms should have destroyed any aircraft.
Why were 4 bodies never recovered? The region was searched extensively. The other 5 were located. The remaining 4 simply evaporated. And there is a third question, one that official documents from that era mention in vague, almost embarrassed terms. Several members of the recovery team reported hearing sounds inside the aircraft during the initial inspection. Sounds with no explanation. Not wind, not metal expanding in the heat. Something that one inspector described in a deposition buried in classified files for decades as sounding like breathing. The testimony was dismissed as heat-induced hallucination, but that inspector never returned to the site, and when asked about it years later, he simply said, "Some things aren't meant to be found." There is a theory that circulates in military history circles and rarely appears in mainstream documentaries. What if the crew didn't bail out because of a navigation error? What if they were forced out? The plane's final trajectory suggests it flew far beyond the point where it should have turned back. To some analysts, the deviation is inexplicable by isolated human error. There are accounts of pilots of the same era describing unidentified lights over the North African desert, accounts systematically ignored because there was a war on and no time to investigate strange lights in the sky. But the lights were there. The Lady Be Good was eventually dismantled, parts distributed to other aircraft in active service, and then the story takes a turn that no screenwriter would dare to invent. Every aircraft that received parts from the Lady Be Good suffered some kind of incident. One crashed into the Mediterranean months later. Another lost an engine with no determined cause. A third, documented in British military records, was evacuated by its entire crew mid-mission when every single instrument on board failed simultaneously for exactly 11 minutes. 11 minutes. And then came back online, normally, as if nothing had happened. The crew never flew again. 9 men fell into that desert in April of 1943. 5 were found. 4 were not. You can choose to believe they were simply consumed by the sand, that time erased every trace, that there is nothing strange about 4 human beings disappearing completely from a region that was already thoroughly searched. You can choose to believe that. But when you remember that final line in co-pilot Toner's diary, "Hate is still alive," you find yourself asking, and the others? The 4 who were never found. Where did they go?